Chapter 7, Common Room. Time skip the Great Hall. The Great Hall buzzed with chatter as the feast came to an end. Plates cleared themselves, candles dimmed to a warm glow, and Professor Dumbledore's voice rose once more. Prefects, please lead your houses to the dormitories. And remember, the Forbidden Forest is, as its name suggests, strictly forbidden. Students began to file out, laughter echoing against the stone walls. Hayley followed James and the Gryffindor toward the doors, Iris right beside her, still smiling from the feast. That treacle was amazing, Iris said dreamily. If I eat like that every night, I'll need a bigger robe by Christmas. Trust me, Hayley grinned. You'll be running up and down the moving staircases enough to burn it off. They joined the flow of students moving toward the staircase, when suddenly bump. Iris collided with someone rounding the corner. The impact sent her wobbling back a step. Oh, I'm so sorry. A tall, pale boy with sleek blonde hair straightens his robes with slow irritation. Well, he said coolly, brushing an invisible speck off his sleeve. That's one way to make an introduction. Hayley blinked. The boy is much older than her and her brother James, but he carried himself like he owned the corridor. His Slytherin badge gleamed under the torchlight. I said I was sorry, Iris replied, trying to sound polite. Lucius smirked. Oh, I'm sure you didn't, the boy interrupted with a drawl. But perhaps next time you could watch where you're going, little first year. Some of us have places to be that don't involve being trampled by clumsy Gryffindor. Hayley frowned, stepping forward protectively. Hey, she said she was sorry. Maybe you could stop acting like she ruined your life. The boy's cool green eyes flicked towards her. A smirk tugged at his lips. Well, another Potter, of course. He gave a dramatic sigh, as if the universe itself were conspiring against him. Is there any corridor in this castle I can walk down without bumping into one of you? Hayley crossed her arms. Not if you keep standing in everyone's way. His smirk widened. Careful, Potter. That attitude might work on your older brother, but I don't find it nearly as charming. Before Hayley could respond, a new voice cut sharply through the corridor. Back off, Malfoy. Lucius' smirk faltered slightly as he turned. A tall, red-haired Gryffindor Gideon Prewett was leaning casually against the wall, his arms folded. His prefect badge gleamed on his robes, and though he looked relaxed, there was steel in his eyes. Picking on first years now, Gideon continued, his voice calm but laced with challenge. What's next, scaring the house elves for fun? Lucius's expression hardened. Just teaching them manners, Prewett. Someone must. The nearby Gryffindors murmured, and even a couple of Ravenclaws slowed to watch. Lucius's jaw flexed, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. You really should choose your battles more wisely, Lucius said in a low voice. One day, that mouth of yours will get you into trouble. Maybe, Gideon said lightly, but at least I won't spend my life hiding behind my father's name. A ripple of laughter spread through the corridor. Lucius's pale face flushed slightly. He glared at Gideon for a heartbeat longer before brushing past with a sharp sweep of his robes. Enjoy your little victory, Prewett, he muttered. You Gryffindors never know when you've gone too far. Gideon watched him disappear down the hall, then turned back to Hayley and Iris with an easy smile. You all right? Iris nodded, still pink. Yes, thank you. Don't worry about him, Gideon said, waving a hand. Malfoy's bark is worse than his bite. Thinks he owns the castle because his dad donates half the silverware. Hayley smiled shyly. Thanks for stepping in. Gideon winked. All in a day's work. Welcome to Hogwarts, by the way. Try not to make a habit of running into Slytherins, they bruise easily. The corridor erupted in quiet laughter. Gideon gave them a mock salute before heading off toward the older students. James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter appeared just in time to catch the tail end of it. What we miss? Sirius asked, slightly out of breath. Just Malfoy being Malfoy, Hayley said, rolling her eyes. James smirked. Well, at least someone shut him up for once. Time skip, Gryffindor Tower. The Gryffindor prefects gathered the first years and led them up the twisting staircases. The torches flickered brighter as they climbed, the air full of whispers and portraits muttering among themselves. "Keep close," one prefect warned. The staircase liked to change direction without warning. As if to prove it, the steps beneath them groaned and swung sideways. Iris squeaked, grabbing Hayley's sleeve. "Brilliant," Hayley laughed nervously. "Haunted furniture." Finally, they stopped before a large portrait of a plump woman in a pink gown. "Password?" she asked cheerfully. "Caput Draconis," the prefect replied. The portrait swung open to reveal a warm, round common room lit by crackling fire. Red and gold banners fluttered gently on the walls, armchairs clustered around the hearth, and the scent of wood smoke and toffee filled the air. "Welcome, Gryffindor Tower," the prefect said proudly. "Girls' dorms to the right, boys to the left." Hayley turned slowly, eyes shining. Sirius was already sprawled on a sofa, Marlene perched nearby laughing at him. James sat beside him grinning, clearly in the middle of recounting some mischief last term. Remus, ever the quiet one, stood near the fire, smiling softly at the sight of the new first-years taking it all in. Across the room, Lily knelt beside her younger sister, showing Iris where the girls' staircase began. Her voice was calm, patient, but her expression stiffened slightly when her eyes flicked towards James. She quickly looked away, turning her attention back to Iris with a small, encouraging smile. From the doorway, Dorcas Lily's Slytherin friend appeared for a moment, her arms crossed loosely. She caught Lily's gaze, gave her a knowing nod, then disappeared down the corridor towards the dungeons. Hayley breathed in and out slowly, warmth blooming in her chest as she looked around the common room. The crackling fire, the chatter, the laughter, it all felt alive, welcoming, and full of promise. For the first time, she thought, this is where I belong. Time skip bedroom. Later that night, the first-years settled into bed. Hayley sat cross-legged under her blankets, her new wand resting beside her pillow. Iris brushed her hair, humming "A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes" by E and Cinderella by the firelight. "Can you believe we're really here?" Iris whispered. Hayley smiled. "After the day we've had, yeah, Hogwarts is already full of surprise." "Even the rude ones," Iris muttered, and they both giggled. A soft knock came at the door. James peeked in, looking tired but happy. "Just checking you two survived your first night." "Barely," Hayley said with a grin. "But we made a new friend. Gideon Prowett scared off Malfoy." James chuckled. "Good old Gideon. He's got a mean right hook and zero patience for Slytherin nonsense." "Sounds like someone I know," Hayley teased. James smirked. "Runs in the family." He ruffled her hair gently. "Sleep well, Hales. Tomorrow the real Hogwarts begins." When the door closed, Hayley lay back, the firelight fading into a soft golden glow. Her eyelids grew heavy, but her smile lingered. From the boats to the feast, from Lucius's sneer to Gideon's grin, her first night had been full of magic and courage. And somehow, Hayley knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 8, First Classes. Time skip, next morning. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall, arched windows of Gryffindor Tower, painting the dormitory walls gold. Hayley blinked awake to the soft rustle of curtains and the sound of Iris humming as she brushed her hair. "Morning," Hayley mumbled sleepily, sitting up and pushing her tangled hair out of her face. "Morning," Iris chirped, far too cheerful for the early hour. "I think the castle's singing." Hayley paused, then realized faint voices were drifting through the stone's walls, portraits chatting, pips humming faintly. Hogwarts was waking up, alive in its own strange way. "This place is insane," Hayley muttered, but she was grinning. The two girls dressed quickly in their uniforms, the Gryffindor crest gleaming proudly on their robes. Hayley still couldn't get used to the idea that she belonged here, that she was part of something magical. When they reached the common room, the fire was burning low. A few sleepy Gryffindor were already heading down for breakfast. Marlene McKinnon gave a friendly wave as she passed, and Sirius called out from the stairs, hair sticking out in every direction. "Morning, newbies. Hope you're ready for a day of complete confusion." Hayley smirked. You mean classes? No, Sirius said seriously. I mean the staircases. They've already moved twice since I woke up. Remus chuckled quietly behind him, holding his books. Ignore him. The castle only messes with people who brag. Sirius blinked. That's weight, are you saying? Remus smiled faintly. Exactly. Hayley laughed as she and Iris followed the stream of students down to breakfast. Time skip, the Great Hall. The Great Hall was even more dazzling in the morning light. The enchanted ceiling showed a pale sunrise spreading across a sky of soft pink and gold. The long tables were piled high with toast, eggs, sausages, steaming pitchers of pumpkin juice. Iris stopped dead in her tracks. It's so bright. And there's so much food, Hayley whispered, eyes wide. Do they even sleep here? James waved them over from halfway down the Gryffindor table, grinning. Oi, there you are. Survive your first night. Barely, Hayley said, plopping down beside him. The stairs tried to eat us. Sirius dropped into the seat across from them, already chewing on a croissant. Ah, yes, classic Hogwarts welcome. Remus took the spot beside him, flipping open a book. You're supposed to be welcoming, not terrifying. I can do both, Sirius replied with a wink. Iris giggled. Across the table, Marlene passed a plate of toast down to them. Eat up, she said. Flitwick doesn't go easy on hungry students. That caught Hayley's attention. We have charms first. Yup, James said through a mouthful of eggs. Professor Flitwick's great, tiny, squeaky, and a total genius. Then transfiguration after that, Remus added, looking up from his book. Try not to panic when McGonagall turns a desk into a cat. Iris blinked. She what? Sirius leaned forward dramatically. And the cat stares into your soul. Remus rolled his eyes. Ignore him, the cat's harmless, usually. James laughed. Don't worry, McGonagall only bites if you forget your homework. Time skip, charms class. Professor Flitwick's classroom was tucked high up in the castle, full of sunlight and fluttering papers. The tiny wizard stood on a stack of books to see over his desk, beaming at his new students. Welcome, welcome, he squeaked in delight. Ah, a fresh batch of first years, how exciting. Today we begin with something light, something fun, and if you're not careful, something that may very well float out of control. A ripple of nervous laughter went around the class. Hayley and Iris exchanged a grin. Hayley's heart pounded against her ribs as she reached for her wand, the same one Ollivander had said was full of promises and mischief. Now then, Flitwick said, pulling a large quill feather from thin air. The spell is Wingardium Leviosa. It means to lift. Perfect for when you can't reach the biscuits on the top shelf. A few students giggled. He flicked his wand gracefully. Wingardium Leviosa. The feather on his desk rose smoothly into the air and began twirling like a dancer. The class gasps in delight. Your turn, Flitwick declared, eyes twinkling. Remember, the swish and flick is the key, and say it clearly. The room instantly filled with the murmur of eager voices. Wingardium Leviosa. Wingardium Leviosa. Feathers jerked, twitched, or burst into sparks. Someone's quill shot across the room and hit the window with a thud. Another student's feather spun wildly before plopping into a jar of ink. Iris's feather lifted an inch, wobbled, and then caught fire. She squealed and dropped her wand as Flitwick hurried over, extinguishing it with a quick charm. Not to worry, Miss Evans, he said cheerfully, vanishing the scorch mark with a tap. Very enthusiastic, Wingardium Leviosa. The feather trembled, then shot upward so fast it zipped straight through the open doorway. Oi, came a familiar voice. Hayley gasped as Sirius appeared in the doorway, a feather now firmly tangled in his hair. He froze, blinking, before pulling it out dramatically. Who's attacking me with fluff? He asked, pretending to be offended. Sorry, Hayley said, covering her mouth to stifle a giggle. It wasn't supposed to fly at you. Flitwick nearly fell off his book stack laughing. Excellent control, Miss Potter, though I recommend aiming at the ceiling, not your classmates. By the end of the lesson, the classroom looked like a pillow explosion. A few feathers hovered lazily near the rafters, refusing to come down. Iris managed to lift hers, crookedly, while Hayley could now make her drift in lazy circles without losing control. When the bell finally chimed, Flitwick beamed. "Wonderful first attempts, everyone. Practice tonight, and next week we'll move on to objects heavier than feathers. Perhaps teacups." As the class packed up, Iris leaned over, cheeks flushed. "I think I love charms." Hayley grinned. "Same, and next time I'm aiming for serious again." Time skip, transfiguration class. After lunch, the first years filed nervously into the transfiguration classroom. The room was neat and orderly, perfect lined desks, spotless blackboard, and a faint smell of chalk and polished wood. A single cat sat on the professor's desk, tail flickering in time with the ticking clock. Hayley and Iris slid into seats beside each other. "Do you think the cat's hers?" Iris whispered. Hayley shrugged. "Probably she looks like a cat person." Before they could whisper further, the cat leapt gracefully from the desk and morphed midair into Professor McGonagall herself. Gasps filled the room. Iris let out a startled squeak loud enough to echo. 10 points to Gryffindor, McGonagall said dryly, "for enthusiasm." The class erupted into nervous laughter. "Transfiguration," she began crisply, packing in front of desks, "is one of the most complicated branches of magic you will study. It requires patience, focus, and absolute precision. Anyone who feels tempted to experiment without supervision may find themselves spending the rest of term as a teacup." The laughter died instantly. "Let us begin." The room filled with murmurs. Wands waved. A few matchsticks cracked in half. One turned plaid. Another turned into what might have been a caterpillar. Hayley bit her lip, repeating the motion carefully. "Coloro mutare." Her matchstick shimmered faintly, then changed from dull brown to a bright, cheerful pink. She gasped. "I did it." Iris cheered softly beside her. "Yours is gorgeous, mine just, oh no." Hayley turned. Iris's matchstick had sprouted tiny whiskers and was twitching on the desk like a mouse. McGonagall appeared beside them without a sound, raising one eyebrow. "Fascinating interpretation, Miss Evans. Perhaps less imagination next time." The class giggled as she waved her wand, returning the matchstick to normal. 5 points to Gryffindor for creativity," she added with the faintest hint of a smile. The next half hour was spent perfecting their spells. McGonagall moved among desks, occasionally pausing to correct a student's wrist angle or pronunciation. Hayley found herself lost in concentration. Her second matchstick now turned a shimmering gold. Iris's kept twitching but no longer had whiskers, which she declared progress. When the bell finally rang, McGonagall addressed them one last time. "Transfiguration is not about force," she said. "It's about control. Remember that and you'll go far." As they packed up, she glanced at Hayley. "Well done, Miss Potter. It seems talent runs in the family. Let us hope you use it more wisely than your brother." Hayley's eyes widened. "Yes, Professor." Outside in the corridor, Iris laughed so hard she nearly dropped her books. "Did she just roast your brother?" Hayley grinned. "Oh, absolutely, and I think it was the best part of the class." Time skip hallway. Transfiguration had just ended, and the first years walks out of the classroom, but as everyone is leaving, McGonagall calls out. "Homework is 12 inches of parchment on the properties of matchstick-to-needle transformations. And no, Mr. Black, you may not test the theory on your ink bottle." Sirius grinned, innocently, as McGonagall gave him a sharp look over her spectacles. Hayley and Iris gathered their books and quills, giggling softly as they followed the line of students spilling into the corridor. The hallway was quieter, filled with the faint hum of magic and the distant echo of hundreds of footsteps across the castle. "Transfigurations is amazing," Iris whispered. "I still can't believe she just turned into a cat." Hayley smiled, tucking a quill behind her ear. "I know, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I nearly screamed." Marlene, walking a few steps ahead, laughed over her shoulder. "Oh, that's nothing. Last year, she turned Mulciber's bag into a pig because he wouldn't stop talking. Iris blinked. You're joking. Marlene smirked. Nope, oinked for a week. They were halfway down the corridor when a strange cackling sound echoed from above, sharp and gleeful, like laughter made of wind and mischief. Hayley frowned. What was that? Oh no, Marlene groaned. Not him again. Before anyone could ask, a piece of chalk came whizzing out of nowhere, exploding against the wall in a puff of pink dust. The first years shrieked and ducked as more bits of chalk and paper planes zipped through the air like tiny fireworks. Boo! The shout came from directly above them. A figure floated upside down near the vaulted ceiling, his jester's cap jingling as he grinned. He was translucent, ghostly but solid enough to make a face, and what a face it was. Peeves, Marlene muttered darkly. The poltergeist cackled, somersaulting through the air. First years, fresh and squeaky new, let's see what kind of trouble you can do. Hayley instinctively grabbed Iris's arm as a paper plane swooped low and stuck itself to her forehead. Written across it in loppy handwriting were the words, Welcome, little lions, beware the halls of Peeves. Iris squealed, pulling it off. He writes notes. He writes warnings, Marlene corrected grimly. Ignore him and keep walking. But Peeves wasn't done. With a dramatic bow in midair, he waved his ghostly hand, sending chalk and parchment swirling in a little storm around the girls. Marching off to lunch, are we? No time for fun. Tut, 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 where's your school's spirit? Peeves, came a sharp, authoritative voice. The air went still. Professor McGonagall had stepped into the corridor, her arms crossed and eyes narrowed dangerously. Peeves froze for half a heartbeat, then his grin returned. Ah, Professor Perfect Paws herself, fancy seeing you out of the litter box. Several students gasped. McGonagall's expression didn't change, though her jaw tightened slightly. Peeves, she said coldly, I would strongly advise you not to test my patience today. Oh, but Professor, he cooed, floating lower. You love me, really. Brightens up your dull corridors, don't I? Last warning, she said sharply. Peeves rolled his eyes in exaggerated fashion, flipped right side up, and gave a mock salute. As you wish, your sternness, but I'll be back for your darlings later. He snapped his fingers, and every single piece of chalk hovering midair exploded in a burst of pink dust, showering the first years from head to toe. Then, with a loud cackle, Peeves zoomed straight through the ceiling and vanished. The corridor fell silent except for the sound of coughing and giggling. Iris sneezed, leaving a faint cloud of pink powder around her. McGonagall sighed, rubbing her temple. Honestly. Then she waved her wand, and the dust lifted off the students in a shimmer of gold. There, better, now off to lunch before he decides to redecorate again. The students hurried off, still laughing. Marlene shook her head. You're officially baptized, she said to Hayley and Iris. Covered in Peeves's pink powder, that's how you know you're a real Hogwarts student now. Hayley smiled as they turned a corner, brushing glitter from her robe. I guess that's normal here. Marlene grinned. Completely. End of the day. That evening, the Gryffindor common room glowed with a warm, golden light. The fire crackled cheerfully, painting the room in soft shades of red and gold. A few upper years reenacting the Peeves incident with over-the-top dramatics. Iris stood in front of the hearth, waving her arms. He was right above us, upside down like a bat. Sirius, lounging on the rug, pretended to fall over laughing. Oh, he got a flair for the dramatic. You'll love him by Christmas, or hate him by next week. Remus smirked. Probably both. Marlene flopped into an armchair. He called McGonagall Professor Perfect Paws again. She nearly turned him into a mop. James laughed. I'd pay to see that. Hayley sat nearby, curled in one of the big red armchairs, a mug of hot cocoa in her hands. She couldn't stop smiling. Every moment today had felt wild, unpredictable, and full of wonder. She pulled her small, leather-bound journal from her bag and began to write for her parents, her neat handwriting glowing in the firelight. Day 1, Survived my first class, did real magic, got covered in pink dust, met a poltergeist. Hogwarts is completely mad. And perfect. James passed by on his way upstairs and ruffled her hair affectionately. Good first day, Hales. The best, she said honestly, smiling at him. As the firelight danced the castle whispered softly beyond the tower walls, Hayley felt it again, that quiet, overwhelming certainty that she belonged. Madness, magic, and mischief included. Chapter 9, the first weekend at Hogwarts. Time skip, Saturday. The first Saturday morning at Hogwarts dawned bright and crisp. Sunlight streamed through the tower windows, glinting off the lake in the distance. Hayley woke to the smell of toast and the faint sound of laughter drifting up from the common room below. I can't believe we've only been here 5 days, Iris said sleepily, rubbing her eyes. Feels like 5 weeks, Hayley mumbled, stretching, in the best way. By mid-morning, most of Gryffindor Tower was buzzing. Older students headed down to Hogsmeade permission meetings. The younger ones lingered near the fire or planned trips to the library. Hayley notices Lily next to a Slytherin boy who looks nervous, Severus Snape. Hayley slowed her steps instinctively. She'd heard James mention him, mostly in laughter. She thought he was friends with him, but she'd never actually seen him before. There was something strange about the way Lily was looking at him, frustrated but gentle, like she was trying to reason with someone who'd already decided not to listen. Come on, Save, Lily said softly, her voice carrying just enough for Hayley to catch. You don't have to keep defending them. They don't care about you. They're my housemates, Lily, Severus replied stiffly. I can't just ignore them. I'm not saying you should ignore them, she said, her tone tightening. But you don't have to be like them either. A long silence stretched between them. Snape's dark eyes flicked away, then back at her. You wouldn't understand. I understand more than you think, Lily said quietly, her jaw tightening. You just don't like hearing it. Before he could respond, a group of Gryffindors passed through, laughing, and Lily glanced toward them, where James was sitting at the far end with Sirius and Remus, pretending not to notice her. Lily's voice softened. I'll see you later, Save. Snape nodded curtly, muttered something Hayley couldn't hear, and slipped into the library. Hayley blinked, caught between curiosity and confusion. She glanced towards Iris, who had also stopped to watch. Who was that? Iris whispered. Severus Snape, Marlene said quietly from behind them. She had seen too. Second year, same as your brother Little Ember and your sister Dreamer. Iris frowned slightly. They seemed tense. Marlene nodded. They used to be best friends. It's complicated now. Hayley's eyes flickered toward James. He was pretending to be very interested in something Sirius was saying, but there was a shadow of guilt in his expression, just for a second. Come on, Marlene said gently. It's the weekend. Let's get some breakfast before Filch bans us for existing. Iris nodded, but Hayley lingered for a moment longer, her gaze drifting back to the now empty window. She didn't know what exactly was going on between her brother's friends, but she had a feeling it was something that would only get messier with time. Finally, she turned and followed Iris out into the hall, the sound of laughter and chatter filling the air again. Time skip, exploring the castle. The castle corridors were alive suits of armor humming to themselves, staircases swinging lazily from one landing to another, portraits whispering gossip. Hayley traced her hand along the cool stone wall. It's like the castle's watching us. Iris laughed. It is. That portrait just winked at you. They turned a corner and nearly tripped over Mrs. Norris. The cat glowing eyes narrowed suspiciously, tail twitching. Marlene muttered, appearing from behind a tapestry. Careful. If she sees you breathing too loudly, Filch will appear. Sure enough, the caretaker's gravelly voice echoed down the corridor. Norris, what are you doing over there? Students shouldn't be wandering. Oh. His eyes landed on them, small and beady. First years. Hayley straightened her robes. We were, exploring. Filch squinted. Exploring, were you? That's what they all say before I find them dangling from the chandeliers. Stay out of trouble. He shuffled away, muttering darkly about muddy footprints and confounded staircases. When he's gone, Iris burst into giggles. Was he serious about the chandeliers? Marlene grinned. Probably Peeves hangs people from them all the time. Time skip Monday potions class. On Monday, the dungeon corridors were kahl and dimly lit by flickering torches. The smell of herbs, smoke, and something vaguely sweet lingered in the air. "Welcome, welcome," Professor Horace Slughorn boomed as the class filled in. His plump face beamed with delight, and his silvery mustache twitched as he spoke. "Ah, new faces, my favorite part of the year." He clapped his hands together, rings glittering. "Now then, I am Professor Slughorn, head of Slytherin House and master of potions. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making." Hayley leaned forward in fascination as he gestured grandly to the cauldrons bubbling on each table. "For our first lesson, we'll attempt something simple but elegant, the cure of boil. An essential start, and one that won't blow up the classroom. Hopefully." The class chuckled nervously. Slughorn's eyes twinkled as he passed their table. "Ah, Miss Potter. Related to young James, I presume." Hayley nodded. "Yes, sir, he's my brother." "Excellent boy, that one cheeky but clever. And you must be Evans, my dear," he said, looking at Iris. "Yes, sir," Iris said brightly. "Evans, 2 sisters this year, marvelous. I do so love family legacies." He turned to the class. "Begin." Soon, the dungeon filled with the soft clinking of vials and the gentle bubbling of cauldrons. Hayley carefully measured snake fangs while Iris stirred clockwise, counting under her breath. Nearby, a Hufflepuff's potion turned an alarming shade of green and began hissing. "Counterclockwise, my boy, counterclockwise," Slughorn called, waving his wand to contain the spill. Hayley leaned over her cauldron. The potion shimmered from violet to sky blue. "I think it's working." Iris frowned at hers. "Mine smells like old socks." Hayley giggled. "Maybe it's just you." "Miss Potter, Miss Evans," Slughorn said as he passed, peering into their cauldrons. "Ah, splendid color, Miss Potter. 10 points to Gryffindor. And Miss Evans," he sniffed. We'll call it experimental. 5 points for effort." By the end of the hour, Slughorn had invited a few promising students, including Hayley and Marlene, to join his little supper club once they were older. As the class packed up, Iris whispered, "He's strange, but in a fun uncle way." Hayley laughed. "Yeah, the kind who accidentally sets the table on fire." Time skip Defense Against the Dark Arts. Their next new class was Defense Against the Dark Arts, taught by Professor Silas Kettleburn, a wiry, one-armed wizard with wild gray hair, patched robes, and a constant look of excitement. The classroom looked more like a zoo than a study hall. Cages, tanks, and strange wooden boxes lined the walls, each emitting noises that could only be described as questionable. "Welcome, my young defenders," he shouted cheerfully, waving his wand, or rather, his wand hand, which was a polished wooden prosthetic that occasionally sparked. "Today, we'll be studying pixies, fascinating creatures. Never underestimate a pixie's sense of humor or destruction." The class eyed the large covered cage on his desk nervously. "Now they're Cornish, they're blue, and they're prone to chaos. I want each of you to observe their behavior." He whipped off the cover. Instantly, 20 bright blue pixies shot into the air, screeching gleefully. They zoomed across the room, tugging hair, snatching quills, and turning over ink pots. "Catch them, my brave Gryffindors," Kettleburn roared, positively delighted. "A hands-on learning experience." "Hands-on, they're everywhere," Iris shouted, ducking as a pixie yanked at her ponytail. Hayley swung her wand. "Petrificus totalis." The spell missed the pixie and hit a chair instead, freezing it mid-wobble. Sirius was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "Brilliant shot, Potter." "Don't encourage her," Remus called, trying to coax a pixie out of his bag. Finally, Kettleburn clapped his hands, sending a wave of blue light through the room. The pixie froze mid-flight and dropped harmlessly into a net. "Excellent enthusiasm," he said proudly, as if the entire disaster had been part of the plan. 15 points to Gryffindor for participation, and 5 to Slytherin for surviving. When the bell rang, the class stumbled out, covered in ink, feathers, and laughter. Iris ran a hand through her tangled hair. That was terrifying. Hayley grinned. That was amazing. Remus chucked. You two are definitely Gryffindors. Why? Hayley asked. Because you thought chaos was fun. Time skip, evening in the common room. That night, the fire roared in the hearth while rain pattered softly against the windows. The air filled with chatter. Marlene helping Iris with her potions essay, Sirius humming a tune off-key, and James sketching something that suspiciously resembled McGonagall turning into a cat. Hayley wrote in her diary for her parents again. Week 1, explored secret corridors. Survived Filch and Mrs. Norris, made a potion that didn't explode. Met pixies, Hogwarts is full of chaos, and I love it. She closed her journal and looked around at the glowing common room, her home. Tomorrow would bring new classes, new chaos, and probably more pink dust from Peeves, and Hayley couldn't wait.